Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Let's go ahead and wrap up my reading for the month of May. Now, May was an interesting month for me because I think two authors really solidified their spot in my top 10 ranking for authors, and we'll get into that when we get to their books. But with that being said, let's go ahead and jump in and start off with the first book I finished in the month of May. And this was actually one that a friend in real life recommended to me. He told me he loves this book, and he was very, very fond of it. I forget exactly the phrasing he used for it, but that book was Greenwood by Michael Christie, and I ended up giving this a 3-star ranking, mostly because there are some character things that happen in here that I just found to be immensely frustrating, and I also just don't think made a whole lot of sense. They were just very frustrating. This book is a family drama disguised as a dystopian. And I say that because we open up in 2030, I believe is the year, and basically there has been a blight that has destroyed most of the forest on Earth. And, obviously there are huge environmental impacts from that. And what really ends up happening in the story is you go back in time and relive the drama of this family line. And while I did enjoy some aspects of it, there were definitely some really impactful moments, and I did care about some of the characters. Not all of the characters were like that, and some characters just made such frustrating choices that it made it less enjoyable for me to read. And when I was talking to some people who I know who read this, they were talking about how, yeah, but life is messy and it's real, and it's like, yeah, but I don't know, it just didn't work for me. I would recommend this to a lot of people. I do think that a decent amount of people would find some enjoyment out of it, but for me, it ended up just being a 3-star ranking. I liked a lot of it and didn't like some of it, so it just kind of ends up in the middle of the rankings there for me. Next up was a very short novella, and this is The Ice Dragon by George R.R. Martin. Now, I believe the publisher is doing something very tricky here. I know it tricked me, it tricked Joanna, that this is kind of being sold as a Song of Ice and Fire, tie-in story or something like that, and that is not the case. You can definitely see some seeds of Westeros kind of tied into the story. There are some references, like the King's Road is mentioned and stuff, but I don't think that it has nothing to do with Game of Thrones or any of the following books. It is its own independent story, but I will say it was really good. I really had a good time with it. It's, like I said, a very quick read. I think it's like a 40-minute long audiobook or something like that. So if you have any interest in reading some of Martin's writing that is not, a Song of Ice and Fire, I highly recommend you do this. I normally don't give novellas, especially one this short, any higher than a 3-star ranking. But as far as a short story, novella length story goes, this is a really good one, and I highly recommend it. Next up, we are going to get to one of those two authors I mentioned who have really solidified their spot in my top 10. And the first one is Cixin Liu with The Supernova Era. Now, this is a very interesting book. The premise of it is unlike anything else I have ever really read. And with a lot of science fiction books, this one falls into that trap, or not trap, but into the reliance on this fantastical, out-of-the-world idea that I don't really want to spoil. It happens very early on into the book, but I feel like this is one of those books where I was absolutely shocked. I think my mouth fell open when you find out what the twist of this book is. So if you're interested in it, I highly recommend you just read it. Get it from the library. Don't don't commit money to it because you're not going to know if you like it. You probably won't. You probably will like at least the premise of it, but his writing is very distinct and it doesn't, jive with everybody. But just to at least get to the point in this book where the big reveal happens, it's completely worth it. It's not very far in, and like I said, it left me absolutely just flabbergasted. I thought it was such an interesting idea, and there are more interesting ideas that end up happening in this book. But yeah, it's very interesting. The Supernova Era by Cixin Liu. Like I said, it's hard for me to recommend this book to a lot of people because it is strictly an ideas book. The characters in here, they're flat. They are one thing and one thing only. There's not a whole lot going on with them. There's some tricky things that happen, and yeah, it's just hard for me to recommend to people outside of the twist. You're not gonna love a character in here. I just don't understand how. It's so far out there that you've really got to be okay with just accepting an idea and letting an author run with it. And I'm actually reading another book by him right now that is probably even more preposterous and out there than this is. And that's just what I love about him as an author. He comes with these ideas and just plays them in a way where he takes them so seriously that it's just mind-blowing to me. And he has once again just done it. Obviously, this is the author of The Three-Body Problem, The Dark Forest and Death's End, if you're not familiar with him. And yeah, he is just something else. And he's not going to click for everybody, but he does absolutely click for me. I ended up giving the Supernova Era 4 stars. And if I had to rank this against all his other books, this is probably my least favorite of the 4 I have read. I also read another book by him called Ball Lightning, and this one is probably ranked below that one, but it's still obviously a really good book, and I really had a good time with it. After that, I ended up picking up Roadside Picnic by the Strugatsky brothers. I know, it's a Russian name, I believe, and I absolutely massacred that. And unfortunately, this is a book that, and this happens to me sometimes with some of this older classical sci-fi, where hearing people talk about the ideas that are explored and the themes that are inside of the book is more interesting to me than the book itself. So I ended up giving this a 2-star ranking. I really did not enjoy my time with it. This is, like I said, one of those books where if I go in and start doing research about what is the theming, what are some of the things that the author is trying to convey through the ideas in the story, I actually enjoy that way more than the book itself. I really am going to struggle to do a review for this one because I didn't get a whole lot. I mean, I got some things from it. There are some things happening, but the main character in this book, maybe that's just part of the problem. He's just very unlikable. I understand some of the things that are trying to go on, but man, for me, it's one of those books that just didn't work. But you know, that happens sometimes when you take a chance on a book. So unfortunately, this one, this is way down my rankings. I don't know exactly where it is, but it's down there, and that's fine. Not every book is going to end up working for you. I do think there are going to be people who read this and thoroughly enjoy it and get a lot out of it. And unfortunately, it's just one of those books that is not for me. And last up is the other author who I think has firmly cemented themselves in my top 10 author rankings, and that is Stephen King with Salem's Lot. So this is my 4th King novel, and I think that's enough of his of a author's catalog, 4 distinct books, not in a whole series, to really creep them up the ranking, especially with how much I have enjoyed every single one of the books I have read from him. That being said, I do think Salem's Lot is probably my least favorite. I think it gets a little messy at the end, and maybe that's just me. I'm sure there are other people who really like the second half of this book much more than I do. And it's not that I didn't like it. Like I said, 4-star book, really enjoyed it. But as far as I compare it to my other King reads, it's in last place. I will go ahead and say that it is my book of the month. So it obviously wasn't that bad if it still ended up coming in first place for the month of May. And this is a very popular book. You probably don't need to hear me talk too much about it. And I definitely don't want to give away any spoilers, because that is one thing I knew, kind of the one twist that happens in this book. And I wish I hadn't. I wish I had just kind of gone into it completely blind. And if you don't know what that twist is, don't read any back cover of this book. Don't read any synopsis, because I'm pretty sure it's spoiled in every single copy of this book I have ever picked up and read the back of. You have just got to pick it up and start reading or listening to it, however you're going to consume this book. Just go into it. If you don't know what the spoiler that pretty much everybody probably knows at this point, I'm jealous of you, because I wish I didn't. I think it would have been a really cool reveal, and it would have given me something to kind of grasp and try to figure out what's going on in the story. I will say I really enjoyed a lot of the characters in this one. I thought, man, once again, Stephen King just has that talent of putting me in a place and making me feel like I'm there. And I think his settings for me just work so well so many times. And that is the part about this story that I enjoyed the most, being in Salem's Lot, or Jerusalem's Lot is what they also call it in the book. But I just really liked being there and experiencing things, and just why do I need to know that this is the lady who gossips about everybody? It doesn't matter really that much to the overall story, but it's nice to know. It's nice to be part of this town and just be there. And so yeah, once again, Stephen King, another great book for me, and book of the month. I do also just want to mention in this part about books that I have made it to about the 10% mark of Memories of Ice, which is book 3 of the Malazan Book of the Fallen. And so far, I am enjoying it immensely. I think I just read what is probably my favorite chapter in all of Malazan, not because it's some crazy reveals or something super epic, but it was I don't know, I just enjoyed it. I felt like I knew exactly what was going on. I understood what everyone was talking about, what the stakes were, who's who, and what their motivations are, and just a whole, a couple different things with some characters that I think I'm going to continue to enjoy. And so, yeah, I just found that really interesting. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to getting more into this book. I would like to finish it next month. We'll see if that happens. That's a very long book, so that was my original goal. My original goal was to be about 50% of the way here, coming in to wrap up May, and obviously that is not what happened. But maybe June will just be a really good reading month for me, and I can knock most of it out then. Now, quickly changing gears a little bit here, we're going to talk quickly about some of the manga I've been reading, and this is maybe going to sound funny to some people, but for the longest time I have used Shonen Jump to read manga, and I've always read it on my iPad. And for the longest time I had the app on my phone, but when I first got it, it didn't sync between devices. Which is crazy, right? And so for the longest time, I never used it on my phone. And I happened to accidentally click on the Shonen Jump app and realized that it had finally started syncing between devices. And so I have, exponentially read more manga than I have recently. I think I've read something like 50 or 60 chapters of Dragon Ball recently. That's the one I've been wanting to read. I also started Kaiju number 8, I believe is what it's called. And so just the fact that I can, instead of scrolling endlessly on Reddit or Instagram or something, I've been reading manga before I go to bed. That has been great. And so I expect my manga reading to really pick up. Maybe I will really finally make some progress on One Piece. It's a series that, I think I'm 150 chapters in, maybe a little bit further, and I'd like to get more into it. I don't know if I'll make videos on it on here, but it's a series that I definitely want to get to. And so just wanted to mention that, my manga reading has picked up exponentially because I accidentally picked up Shonen Jump on my phone and realized that it was syncing between devices. And then quickly I'll mention the other medias which I consider TV, movies, and video games. I recently watched the James Bond movie From Russia with Love. This is the original one. I don't know if there's a remake of it actually, now that I say that, with Sean Connery. I think it's they filmed it either like late 60s, early 70s or something like that. And man, I don't know why, but I loved that movie. I had such a good time with it. I don't know why. It's kind of cheesy. It's kind of just all those things of like a classic Bond movie. Like all the negatives you can think of are there. And for whatever reason, I liked it so much, which is interesting because I did not enjoy the first one, what is it, Dr. No, nearly as much as I did from With Russia with Love. And so I'm going to continue watching the movies. If you don't know, I read all of the books like last year, all the Ian Fleming James Bond books. I haven't continued with any of the other authors who picked it up afterwards. But so I read all those books and I kind of want to watch all of the movies now. So I'm going to slowly make my way. I think the next one is Goldfinger. So that will be interesting. I don't know. Some of these I have watched way long ago when I was much younger and don't really remember. And I think Goldfinger maybe was one of them. So it'll be interesting to see if I have some like childhood memories come back and I remember parts of that movie. But for whatever reason, From Russia with Love was just fantastic. And I had such a good time with it. I also rewatched I think it's 2014 version of Godzilla. Man, what a frustrating movie. I think that's it's between like 4 and 6 times something amazing is happening on the screen and they cut away and show you in like the corner on like a TV while they're focusing on another character, this awesome kaiju fight. The whole reason I'm here is, playing on a TV that's like 13 by 13 over somebody's shoulder in a hospital that you can barely see. It's extremely frustrating. It's still a fine movie. Like, it's still a Godzilla movie. I love Godzilla, so obviously I'm going to watch it. But man, what a frustrating experience. I forgot. Also, obviously, Bryan Cranston dying in like the first 15 minutes of the movie. It's like, why was he even in this movie? What was the point? I do remember him being such a part of like the media tour going into it, and then him dying in the first 15 minutes it's a bold choice. That's to say the least, to get somebody of his caliber, especially when that movie was coming out. I feel like that was like peak Breaking Bad. And to have him die like that, just extremely frustrating. And on the TV front, I have finally finished Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It took me and my girlfriend a really long time to finish it. I will say that it's done, and I am planning on doing a live stream, I think, with Nick from another booktube channel at some point, maybe in July, maybe a little bit later. I think we're both kind of busy, so we are going to figure out a time when that happens, and it's going to be awesome. He is a really big fan. I think he's said it's his favorite TV show of all time. He's even read, or he's in the process of reading a bunch of the books that I didn't even know existed for the series, which is super cool. So I don't know exactly what we're going to talk about. I think we're going to go through each season and probably talk about what we like, didn't like, stuff like that, basic stuff. But I'll have more information on that when we get to it. And we me and my girlfriend, when I say we, also watched the Jeopardy Champion Masters. I forget exactly what it is, but you know, it's the best of the best playing Jeopardy, and always a really good time. We enjoy the special Jeopardy stuff, so like Celebrity Jeopardy, and obviously this one. It's always a lot of fun, and we make sure we watch it. And yeah, the person who I thought would win did not, which was kind of interesting. Hopefully they do another one of these in not the too distant future, because I quite enjoy watching them. I also enjoy those ones because the questions sometimes are so hard. I'm just baffled that people even know what is going on sometimes. And it's the exact opposite for Celebrity Jeopardy, because I feel like Celebrity Jeopardy is pretty easy and I do very well on those. And then you go to the Masters and it's just like, where did you guys even think to find that information? Like, what obscure book did you find in the back corner of a library that somehow had this information in it? And then I'll go ahead and wrap up with my video games, which is pretty much just CS2, I think is the only thing I've played. I maybe played a game of Valorant. I played a game of Valorant. CS2 is significantly better. But that was my month of May. Please let me know how yours was down below in the comments. I'd love to hear what you read, watched, all of that fun stuff. And that's all for me. So, as always, have a good one.